So cool. So I'll be starting the session now. It's 2:05. I'll go back to my slides, but before I do that, I would first want to understand what are the expectations that you guys have coming into this session. Anyone?
To have a better understanding of pricing and merger and acquisition cases.
Well, that's the title of the like case study, right? That's the title of the session. Anything else?
Yeah, it would be great if we could have examples as well,
Cool.
like
Any
different
other
scenarios with
expectation?
you.
Yep. I think we'll have some of it. Any other expectation? Nope. So, fine. I have a quick poll just to understand what's the status of the batch that we have over here. So the first question is, how many of you have ever attempted over 5 cases before? Attempted or practiced, whatever. A raise of hands would do. So I have 12 people who say they have done it. Right, 12. All right, you can lower your hands. Now the next question is, and I'll just write it down here. Yeah. So it's 12. Okay, how many of you have practiced over 3 profitability cases before? Three or more profitability cases. Right. So I have like 5, 6 people. And the last question is, how many of you have practiced over 3 pricing cases before? Just 3 people, 4 people, right? So that's what happens to pricing. This is a very much ignored area. Like this is not a very popular area where people practice pricing and M&A both. So we are into an arena where even I or even others like who are taking the session, Yogesh and Rajat, are not very highly practiced, right? We don't we do these as frameworks and all, but we don't go ahead and do a lot of cases. Why? So the reason is that when you decide what to pay for something, it's not very easy. It's very hard, and I'll show you with an example. Does anybody know who these two guys are, Merton and Scholes? PG20 would know it, right? Those who are pursuing DRM. Black Scholes, anyone? So you guys know about the Black Scholes model, right? Apurva, yes. You can talk directly. No need to raise a hand. Just unmute and say it to anybody. Ha, Purva.
So it's basically the price options. That one.
Yeah, both of them got a Nobel in 1997 for the Black-Scholes model, which determines the price variation of financial instruments. So this is not exactly at the price that we will be doing, but this is to decide what to pay for something, right? So this is these are the father of this Black-Scholes model. So let's understand what happened to them after they got this Nobel. After 1997, they had a
Arjun,
hedge
just
fund
one thing.
called.
I'm sorry, but I think you're still on the first screen for most of us. It's still showing pricing and M&A.
Oh, that's okay. That's interesting.
So now it's on quick poll. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just reshare it. Okay. Okay. So, are you seeing Merton and Schultz?
It's quick poll right now.
Does it show now?
Yeah.
Okay, I think full screen mode is a problem. Let me just. Okay, is it any better now?
So it's on the Merton. You have photos of Merton and shows how easy, hard is it to decide what to
Yeah,
pay.
cool. So as I was saying, they got a Nobel Prize, and it's basically to decide what to pay for anything, right? So after 1997, when they got the Nobel, in 2000, they had a fund called Long Term Capital Management Hedge Fund, which is basically dealing in options and all. Their fund went bankrupt in 2000, and these are the father of this of Black-Scholes model. All right, and Scholes was a key player in the collapse, as per Investopedia, of this fund, which was one of the biggest hedge fund disasters in history. Let's take another example. After this 2000, Scholes went on to start another hedge fund. This is called PGAM. In 2008, it even went bankrupt. These are the father of option pricing. There's some space left on the slide, right? What do you think happened next? Do you believe that these guys could bounce back or they would fail again? Any guesses? Random guesses?
Fail again, probably.
Fail again, probably. So
I
that's
mean,
what
if they are
exactly
founders,
happened.
they succeeded at some point.
So that's what exactly happened. Yeah. So they tried again. This time they started a financial consulting service group, the Trinsum Group. Scholes was a partner. Merton was a chief science officer. It also went bankrupt in 2009. So the reason why pricing cases are not very popular in case interviews and people generally do not do it, because you can only reach a certain level. You cannot be very sure about what you're going to do in the case. Okay, so as I started you earlier, I have some learning outcomes that I planned myself, and you can see there are learning outcomes for you and for me. From the frameworks, I would say that what I wanted, that you should be able to understand this much neglected area, and these cases are not easy to solve without the frameworks. For me, it was more about synthesizing all the knowledge assets across different B schools and different books. For the cases, it would be live practice for you. However, we won't do the full cases. We will just do to it to a limit. For me, it would be how to handle your diverse approaches, right? And from the overall session, just don't think of this as pricing for case interviews. Think of it how you can take these learnings beyond this and how to handle things in a structured manner. For me, of course, it is about more about presentations and presenting these ideas to you. One word of caution: this material has been synthesized from multiple knowledge by me, and this is prone to error. Anytime you feel you want to correct me or interject, it's absolutely fine, and please unmute and go ahead. There's no need to raise hands or anything. All right. Before we start, there's just a list of things which I won't cover. Again, as I said, I won't solve end-to-end cases. There's not much time. Just a second. Uh, it's still. What screen are you guys seeing right now?
That shows one only.
Oh
Robert
God.
Merton's screen.
Oh God. What's the problem with Google? I'll just share the whole screen then. You guys would have to like tell me interim कि is नहीं चल रहा है, because I am using the slides. Okay, what slide is visible now?
Yeah, the
ठीक है.
stakeholders.
Now it is fine. Now it is fine.
Okay, it's working, right?
Mm-hmm.
ठीक है. So this was the learning outcome, as I was saying. Cool. We have done this. Uh, what we won't cover में कि I won't be solving end-to-end case. We don't have much time. Calculations, we will deviate from the topic. And the things you can see, right? Okay. Now, given this is not a certain area, given that this is problematic, sometimes neglected, but we still have to solve it, right? So how will we solve it? Let's just start with a very small example, and I hope you are seeing the slide framework. What we are pricing, what are we pricing, right?
Yes, Arjun.
Cool. Okay. So the first question that you have to ask in any case interview, or in fact for even in real life of pricing, is what are we pricing? And it starts from the product that we are given to be priced. Let's say a very random example. Let's say there is a soap bar, or a soap solution rather, which is clinically proven. Now understand that it is clinically proven to provide you with a softer skin and better glow, right? I'm making this up. So it's clinically proven. What type of product it is? It's a new launch, right? It's a new launch, but what type of new launch?
It is a skin softener.
Sorry.
It is a skin softener.
Yeah, it's a soap which softens the skin and provides you a glow, but it's clinically proven.
So we can say that it is a skin softener.
Yeah, cool. But do we have such products available in the market already?
Your screen is again not properly visible.
Okay, is this visible now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So as I was saying, what type of product it is? Is it
It
available in the
is,
market?
yeah, it is available.
It is available, but this is something new, right? The existing products are not clinically proven. So what, this is an innovation. What type of innovation it is? Is it like just 20-30% better from the rest, or is it something radical?
20,
I think it's
30.
just incremental.
Exactly. It's
Incremental.
all, you have so many products which promise the same thing. The only factor is that they don't claim that they're clinically proven. This product has just gone ahead and said it's clinically proven. So it's not something radical, right? Let's say if I get a new shoes tomorrow which helps me run 3x faster because it has got some automated springs in it, that will be a radical innovation. So the way to price that product would be different from a clinically proven skin glowing shampoo or a whatever soap, versus let's say somebody launches a new TMT, this iron bars, right, or rolled steel. That's a commodity that's still there in the market. So the product to be priced could be a radical invention, as I said, these running shoes. It could be modification to existing product, which could modification could be not just in terms the way the product is, but it could also be how it's marketed. And the last is it similar to a existing product, the rolled steel bars and all, right? And with the it's a, if it's a modification to the existing product, it could be either you have competition in the market or you don't have competition in the market. This would help you in further stage of the case, not in the starting. That's why it's a level 2. All right, now that we understand what are we pricing, what's the next logical step? Now let's stick with this soap example, and let's just assume normal soap costs around 50 rupees per bar. All right, a face soap like Pears or something. uh, how would you price this product? What's the next question to ask?
Which of the category that product lies?
Okay, what else? So the
Benchmarking
category
with
is
the
clear.
existing
It's
product.
soap, right? The category is very clear. Yeah, somebody was saying
The
something.
the cost at which we are manufacturing
The
it.
cost, yes. What else?
Customer target.
Customer target, yes.
But
That's helpful.
what is the customer perception of the product? Means if customer value the product as very highly valuable, then we can price it more. But if customer think that this is the product which is easily available and should not be paid more, then we cannot price it very high.
So the problem with customer perception is that it's an after the fact thing. First, you will decide what the strategy is, then you will decide what the pricing is, you will launch it, and then you will go on to measure the customer perception. We are at the launch phase of it. We don't know what the customer perception is because the customers haven't seen that product.
But we can do survey for it. We can give it is for some customer to free, and we can do survey on those customers. Means
We do have pre-launch surveys, but look at it this way. If Santur, let's say, is launching this new soap, it's there in their R&D labs. If they come and ask me as an Arjun Talwar, as a user of these soap or shampoo, how would I know what the product is? They haven't yet started to market it. They don't even have a strategy on it. So it's impossible for me to understand and give them feedback, right? So the customer perception is after the fact.
okay.
Logically speaking, not just in case interviews, even in real life. All right. So I have tried to alter the existing frameworks to like pivot it to how I think. So this is the way I would go about a case, and this is how I like imagine a product being priced. I've given a canvas to you. Don't look at the x-axis; it's just a zero line. We have the y-axis. We have the price on it, right? Uh, as I said, is 50 rupees for a normal. Just a second. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
Ah,
Arjun.
yeah. So as I said, 50 rupees for a normal peers. Let's just assume that. Where do you think this product will be priced? And let's say this is, let's say, 5,000. Let's just say this is 5,000. Now, I have given you this. Let's just not have this randomness. I'll give you one more clue. We have the zero price line over here, right? We have the zero line over here. What other markations on this y-axis would help us identify a range? What else should we mark on this line? What would be the controlling parameters, the deciding parameters? And you guys, I think somebody was already said it in the starting.
What's
Okay.
the maximum the customer is willing to pay?
You're not audible clearly.
What is the maximum amount that the customer is willing to pay?
Exactly. That's one of the lines. Exactly. And as somebody of you, I think covered in the starting, what is the cost? Right. So the next line, which would help us identify where to price this, because we have this long area, we cannot price it everywhere, right? So the first line that would help us understand would be the cost per unit. The next thing would be the competition average, which is 50. 50 should be here, right? 50 should be here. What is the competition average? And the last, as you said, what is the maximum value to the buyer? Maximum value some would mean it could be a technical value. Let's say I launch a new shock absorber for cars, and it reduces the wear and tear in cars by 60-70%, which leads to an annual savings of 10,000 rupees. Well, let's just assume those numbers. So what is the maximum value to the buyer in this case? So I'm saying we have launched a new shock absorber for cars, for automobiles, which reduces wear tear up to about rupees 10,000 rupees per year. What's the maximum value to the buyer?
10,000.
10,000.
10,000 exactly, yes. That's the maximum value. And if you charge him, let's say exactly 10,000, you are totally removing his consumer surplus. You all have studied this in economics, right? Consumer surplus होता है, उसको 10,000 की value मिल रही है. We are offering a price of let's say 9,000. His consumer surplus is 1,000. So that's called the maximum value to the buyer. Now in this chart, this is the feasible pricing zone from cost per unit to the maximum value to the buyer. This is the feasible pricing zone. But within this, there's still further bifurcations. And most of the case studies, case books don't go ahead and do this, but I would still like tell you the bifurcations beyond this. The first is this is called penetration pricing, where we are just above our cost per unit and plus some margin, some profit margin. This is called penetration pricing. The next is called parity pricing, competitive pricing, parity pricing, whatever. So it's called parity pricing. We are somewhere plus minus 10-20% of the competition average. We're in the zone of the competition average. And the last is called price skimming. Now this is interesting. With price skimming, you're trying to extract the maximum consumer surplus, right? You don't want to leave anything on the table. You probably the first version of the product you would do price skimming, and when the technology gets popular, everybody gets a clinical trial for these soaps, or everybody gets these shock absorbers. You would reduce the pricing in the future states. Now the question to you is, and it's very interesting. These are the three zones. Beyond this can be price. Is there any other zone on the map where we can price?
No,
No.
no.
We cannot price. Uh, any different opinions? Anybody else?
Means if it,
Luxury products.
Luxury
above
products. Okay.
value.
no,
So
if it is for only one customer, anybody cannot have it, and only one customer can, then we can have an auction and price it more also.
I
we
didn't get you
can
actually.
Means- So suppose the thing is for only one customer. It is an antique piece or
Monopsony.
yes,
Only one customer is a monopsony, right?
yes.
So let's say the government. Government is a monopsony. In most of the cases, if I'm building a highway, I have to deal with NHAI. There's if I'm a highway contractor, rather, I only have to deal with NHAI. There's nothing else that I can do with. We have to build national highways. That's a monopsony. But in that case, your price would be somewhere here around this cost per unit, because the leverage is all with the buyer, right? He's the only one who can buy. If he says no, then it's no. Then it won't be here. It would be somewhere here. Cost per unit plus some profit margin. And to be honest, in real life, that's the only example where you will have cost per unit some plus some profit margin type of pricing. Baki for all other products, it's somewhere here. इसके ऊपर रहता है.
If there is more demand and less supply, and the product is really critical, let's say not soap but vaccine, so there we can increase the price of the product.
All right. So that's one of the concepts that I wanted to talk about actually, and that's exactly what I wanted to pinpoint at. This maximum value to the buyer. How is it determined? Let's say you just ran a marathon. You're in fact you're in the process of running a marathon. You have just ran 10 kilometers. You have still more kilometers to go. You are utterly tired. It's hot, and somebody comes in front of you and says, "Buy this water bottle from me." How much would you be willing to pay?
Maybe 500 or
500 rupees, right? Because that's the value you derive from it. It's a maximum value. And let's just say you're sitting at home chilling watching TV and doing nothing. You're like almost all fine, and somebody comes to you and say that, hey, buy this water bottle from me at 500 rupees. Would you buy?
no.
Right. So the maximum value to buyer is going to shift, and we will discuss the levers how to shift it. This line is not uh, is not exactly a fixed. It's decided by the marketing team, right? It's decided by the marketing team, and we have to pull some levers to control it. And I'll discuss this how to use this in a case interview. And this is, by the way, called utility. We use utility. So if you ever study price analytics, you would get how to understand consumer utility. But how to use all of this in a case interview? right? I won't be going to the depth of how to ask questions in a case interview, how to conduct yourself, and how to like have that questioning with the interviewer, because that's already covered yesterday by Yogesh. I would just show you these concepts and how you can pull these levers to be able to get to a reasonable outcome. All right. So in an interview, what you have to do is you have to determine this cost per unit, and you have to provide an answer, a reasonable answer to this maximum value to the buyer. This is what you have to do in a pricing case study. If you can provide these upper and lower and upper bound, that's 80% of a case done, right? You would identify what costs are going into it, and then you would go ahead and say that because of these reasons, I think the maximum value to the buyer is rupees X, and my price would be in this feasible pricing zone. The next question is, okay, to answer the previous question, can we price it somewhere else? Look at this. This is something called an introductory pricing. Any examples of introductory pricing where you're paying less than cost when you're charging less than cost per unit?
When Geo already free.
Exactly. Now the next question is, can we place it somewhere else?
We can place it in penetration pricing.
So green zone is done, this red zone is also done, we are left with two white spaces. Can we price it somewhere else?
Yes, maybe. Yes.
Where?
Means
Can it be
suppose.
Below
if
zero.
you give them some
Yes,
offer?
yes.
Okay, yes, you sometimes pay for sales. Any good example? Now, just to be clear, these two are not covered in conventional case studies, in case booklets that we have. This is something of a very new phenomena which has taken place in the last 5-7 years on a mass level. So, any idea when you pay for sales?
Well, let's say when Hero Honda gift a car, or Maruti gives car to Akshay Kumar or Sachin Tendulkar, so they are paying for to give gift them car so that they can good
So
advertising.
that would be a marketing expense, not per se. You're not pricing it that way.
Okay.
Think of a product which is priced such that you get the consumer gets money for using it.
I think this was done by Geo.
Okay, did they give cash handouts to
No,
somebody
no,
taking a
no,
sim?
no, they don't give.
I guess in stock apps that are coming right now, na, so they give 100 rupees bonus.
Exactly. They charge you 0 rupees for buying anything. They charge you sometimes 0 rupees. Sometimes they charge you a fee, 150 rupees or something. Sometimes they charge you 0 rupee for starting a, what do you say, account. They charge you zero for buying stocks, but they still pay you 500 rupees, 1,000 rupees, 200 rupees for starting an account. Right. So you pay for sales, pay for the other person using the product. Now the next logical question is, now that we know all this theory, gyan aa gaya, how do we go till here? And it's very logical, right? This is the price type. From price type we have to understand the pricing method. So price skimming is closest to the value to the buyer. We have to use value based pricing methodology over here, right? As I said, we have to measure the utility in real life. We have to measure the how much utility the buyer is getting, based on which we can determine, we can try to lower his consumer surplus, right? The next is competition average. That's very simple, right? You have 10 products in the market, take an average of those products which are very close to your product, and plus 10 plus 20 minus 10 minus 20, right? And the last is penetration pricing, which is basically cost based. As I said earlier, you have your cost per unit, you add some margin, and that's it. For introductory pricing, you wouldn't give this in a case interview as it is. You wouldn't say that this is your pricing. This could be part of the strategy. This is for limited time. When it comes to paying for sales, uh, it's usually subsidized through another product. For example, in the Zerodha case that you gave, or the stock apps, they subsidize it when somebody sells a stock. When somebody sells a stock, they charge 20 rupees or 0.1x or whatever, 0.01x rather. Or probably when you make intraday trades, they charge you a hefty fees. So that product, the trading and selling of stocks, is subsidizing your sign up and buying of stocks, right? So it's usually subsidized to something else. So these are the two approaches where you'll have to be extra careful not to give them directly in a case, but as a strategy. Let's talk about examples. For price skimming, one of the best examples is orphan drugs. What is orphan drugs?
Maybe the drugs like means
Okay, so I has ever worked in pharma, you wouldn't know orphan drugs. So we have some diseases called rare diseases. So one in 10, 100,000, two in 100,000.
You are on mute.
Okay, what was the last one I was audible? Orphan
orphan
drugs, yeah.
drugs.
So if you haven't worked in pharma, you wouldn't know orphan drugs. There are some diseases called rare diseases. These are very rare in nature, as in one or two people in 100,000 would have them, right? They are not like regular diseases like diabetes and all. So these diseases have very few people, have a very few what do you say, patient base. And the way you price scheme there is that you would understand, if not this drug, what are the other treatments the person has to go through, right? He would have to regularly for life, let's say, visit a hospital twice a week. You factor that in. Or you say that this person is going to die in the next 3 years. There are such diseases, rare diseases, and those drugs then go into like 500,000 for a pill. And I'm not joking, it's there, right? And in Europe there have been investigations why these products are so expensive. So they would charge anything crazy just because they have the ability to price skim. Price parity, I'm seeing car based segment, and I've intentionally taken a very controversial example over here. Can you guess how does competition based pricing work in parity pricing for cars?
So feature, mileage, all these kind of things we can take into account while pricing a car. Let's say it's giving a better mileage or better features, so we can price it more as
So
per
how
the
does it relate to the competition?
compared to the competition. We compare it, right? All these
Yeah.
specifications.
So we have this mileage. There's one very important thing. I'm not sure if you covered it, but anybody else who
The-
got the, yeah.
we play for let's say luxury car like BMW, Audi, or Porsche, Ferrari. They price in the segment and they compete among them. As Ferrari compete with Porsche, and BMW compete with Audi, and we have then in the lower segment Maruti and Suzuki. Maruti.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to get to. Just give me a second. I'm getting a call repeatedly. Just give me I'm so sorry. Yep. I'm sorry. I had some call. Okay. Oh, all right. So the car segment is basically when you price a let's say sedan. What's the cheapest sedan that you guys know of? I hope I'm audible.
Sir, you are audible.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the cheapest sedan you know of in India, right?
I think any sedan in the sub 4 meter category.
Sedan plus 4 meters, not sub. So sub 4 meter would be a Swift Desire or a, I don't know, but let's talk about plus 4 meters. So it usually starts from a Maruti. The cheapest car in any segment would be a Maruti. So it starts with Ciaz at 9.5, 9, 10 lakhs. It starts from there, right? And what's Honda City priced at? 10 to 12. What's Ciaz priced at? 10 to 9 to 12, roundabout. What's Yaris from Toyota priced at? 10 to 12, 10 to 13, right? 9 to 12 rather. So these are all packed. Well, there's a new class of cars coming in, micro SUVs or mini SUVs, whatever. You have cars like Venue, Magnite, and all. So where are they priced at? They're priced around 8. You have Kia Sonet. They're all packed. Nexon. They're all packed at 8. Right. So you look at the competition. If you have a competition from that, if you have a car from that segment, it has to go in that price range. Nobody is going to come tomorrow and going to price a Sonnet at 15 lakh just because you have the Kia brand name. Right. The size, the type of the car does matter. And then you have segments, as somebody said, you have segments like those luxury segments, and you have Marutis, the mass production cars. Okay, penetration price would be, we all know this, it's Chinese smartphones and inkjet printers. Now what happens with Chinese smartphones is they give you these phones at 8,000 rupees, just above cost, and they have thousands and thousands of people using it. In fact, lakhs of people using it, and that's how they make a return on capital. For printers, what is the pricing strategy? We all have studied it.
I think that
It's a
the
hook
cost
and
of
loop
the printer is
strategy.
less, but they charge a lot for the refills and cartridges.
Exactly. So that's why they penetrate the market. They want to go to a mass market and then sell those consumables. For introductory, we said Geo, of course, and for paying for sales, Paytm used to do it. When you make a transaction, it was free, but you would still get 30 rupees on a transaction of rupees 100. 30 rupees back. All right. Now that we know this, and we have to identify these three green prices, right? Skimming, parity, and penetration. We also know the pricing methodology. But what are the different levers which affect this? The different levers, and you have to identify a feasible price floor. Price floor means penetration pricing. How to identify feasible price floor? क्या क्या factors होंगे इसके अंदर? Let's say this beauty soap, this Santoor beauty soap that we have been talking about. What would be its price penetration pricing? And think of this like a conversation and a case.
It will be the cost of manufacturing it and some profit. Let's say 10%,
Exactly. But how much profit?
maybe 10%, 20%,
Why?
because they want to have penetration in the market. They want to increase have large volume, so that even if they get even 1 or 2
All,
rupees per.
all right. But what other considerations would you have? Cost plus profit hoga. This is like very direct and simple, right? But how to decide how much profit, and what would control that, right? What's the main reason कि हमें वो profit चाहिए? मैं 2% profit भी शायद कर लूँ काम, because if I sell 100 crore of that soap to everybody in India at a 1% profit, I'm still making huge money.
Yes.
So what are the factors which control that price floor?
Production
Other expenses
capacity.
that the company has.
Sorry,
Other expenses that the company has.
other expenses as in, so I'm saying all variable prices, all variable costs rather, are taken into the unit cost. I'm taking the unit cost as all variable costs plus some profit. So what other cost are you talking about now?
Maybe the future expansion needs and
They would need something for cash, but let's say that this is a very very simple world, and they have credit lines available. They don't need cash from this product.
Economics of scale, like Walmart products are priced low
But
because
economies of scale would lead to cost reduction.
so we can have like the profit margin according to that, right?
Okay. The next logical step for me would be that you created this soap, did some R&D, which would not be great, right, for a shampoo or for a soap. But you conducted a clinical trial, and that's an expensive affair. It takes time. It would take 5 years, 3 years, depending on the product. You waited for such a long time. All that R&D cost was just waiting on your inventory, on your balance sheet for those 3 5 years. And you let's say spend about 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, whatever dollars to get the clinical trial done. You would have to recoup those costs, right? And that's the limiting factor in how to decide a price floor. Okay, so the way you go about it is you say that your investments that you have made into R&D or capital assets, right, would be equal to, for break even, would be equal to the margin per year you get per year per product, the quantity you sell into the gestation period. Gestation period is, let's say I spend 100 crores on this project, but I'm cool enough if I get this money back in the next 5 years, right? So gestation period is those 5 years. Okay, margin per unit per year, quantity per year, it is the gestation period. This should be equal to the investments in R&D and D and capital assets. How do I get this margin per year? It's very simple. We have already covered it. Margin from cost-based pricing would be equal to all revenue streams. Now, what are all revenue streams? As we said, for inkjet printers, it would be the price of the printer itself, how much the price of future consumables. It should be price, not cost. Price of future consumables and price of future servicing, right? Both of them are price. So let's say an auto dealer, a car dealer doesn't make a lot of money from selling the cars itself. The margin is not very great, right? But they make a lot of money when they service the car. So all revenue streams have to be considered, and this gets very tricky if you do not have this framework in mind. You would, like, in a lot of cases you would make mistakes. It's very important to understand you have to consider all revenue streams. You have to then apply a profit. It could be expected profit margin, industry average, or it could be coming from this key, how much we have to recoup in what time. And then you say you have to subtract all variable costs. Variable cost would be raw materials, transportation, maintenance, processing, manufacturing, etc. So when you have this formula in place, you get a margin. This margin goes here into how much quantity into the gestation period, and this gives you how much it gives you the formula for and how much time the investment will be recouped, right? Any questions to till this point? I assume it's heavy, but the reason it's heavy is because beyond this you wouldn't need anything else in pricing for about, let's say, 90% of the cases. If you have these two slides in mind, right? The previous one was, okay, of course this one, this is a very basic slide. If you have these two slides in mind, you would never need anything beyond this. Any questions till this point, or do you would you want me to repeat any part?
Can you just repeat gestation period? I didn't understand that.
Okay, so gestation period is something the company either has it in mind, or you would, if it's not given, you would decide it. Gestation period is something, let's say I made an investment of 100 crores and I am cool enough, or I have planned, or I have budgeted that I would get it back in the next 5 years. So that's the gestation period. If you are, let's say, deciding the expected profit margin, if you're deciding the profit from the expected profit margin, let's say you had 10% in mind when you designed the product, so the margin would be decided per that. The quantity you would somehow come from guesstimates, or you would do a market sizing, and you have the investments given, then you will find out the gestation period if it's not given to you. In all scenarios, you will always have this. You'll have to calculate this and this. You'll have to get to this. And how many years will I recoup my investment? Or let's say if this is given, you would have to find either of this.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. So, first of all, is it mathematically heavy? Is it easy to digest? Is it difficult to digest? And let's be very frank about it, right?
Yes, I want to clarify. I want you to clarify just one thing. This margin from cost-based pricing, is it beyond the fixed and the variable costs we had in the past?
So, all the fixed costs, I'm saying, go over here. These are the investments or the fixed costs, R&D and capital assets. All the variable costs are here. You have your revenue stream, all your revenue coming in, plus your profit, which is profit is basically part of this revenue streams, and you minus the variable costs. So basically, you get your margin. This profit is a part of this, all the revenue streams, right? I should have put it into brackets or something, but yeah, let me just put it into bracket. Yep, it's a part of this. So all your variable costs subtracted from the revenue that you are getting, which includes a profit, and you get your margin.
Okay, I mean, I just want to have a good clarity of thought here. So I'll say what I understand. Just correct me if I'm wrong. So the investment part is the total profits we have. I mean, total investment we have done, fixed cost. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. So the quantity and the gestation period will be the total number of the next things that we will be having, and the margin per year will be the profits which will be, I mean, all the revenue which we will be getting, and from which we are removing the variable costs. So can you clarify that why we are removing the variable costs there?
Okay, so let's say you have this soap manufacturing facility, right? You set up a R&D for it. You spend 50 crores. You set up a factory. You spend another 50 crores. That's 100 crores. I'm saying leave that aside. And I think you would learn this in the class of Kirti Sharma also. Let's say I'm saying leave that aside. Now, for every time you manufacture a new soap, it costs you 2 rupees. It costs you 2 rupees. And you are selling it, let's say, for 100 rupees. Okay. In this case, there is no future consumable. There is no cost of servicing. We have 2 rupees, and we are selling it for 100 rupees, and we have the cost is 2 rupees. I will just go to an Excel sheet. Okay, so 100 is the revenue. Cost is 2. What is the margin? The margin is, of course, this minus this. 98. Now I have this with me, right? Let's say the gestation period is given to me 5 years. Okay, the gestation period is given to me 5 years, and how much investment do I have to recoup? I have to do 100 crores worth of. This is the investments. Now, how much investment do I have to recoup every year? It would be this divided by this 20 crores every year. To recoup 120 crores every year, how much do I have to sell every year? I'm saying that this is 100 crores. This is 98 per piece. This is unknown, and this is 5 years. All right. How much units do I have to sell? In fact, it's 100 crores. was correct earlier. Ah, okay, whatever it is, it's not getting converted into millions. Yep. Am I audible?
Yes, Arjun.
Sir.
Yeah. So how would you calculate this? It's very simple, right? For every unit, you are getting 98 rupees. Every year, you have to cover this much. The units that you have to be able to sell is this divided by this. This is how much units you have to sell.
Yes, got it. Arjun. Thanks.
Got it. Cool. Would still say go like I would share this deck with you. Go like back and forth with the slides and try to understand the maths. It's very simple. And to those of you in the first year, you would be doing this for practically all of the cases for Kirti Sharma. Okay, this is the feasible price floor. We said we discussed over here how to decide this maximum value to the buyer. Now let's take a fresh non-mathematical start. There is no maths to it. The maximum value to the buyer. You have to be extremely creative, especially given in a case environment. There is no external data. How would you decide what is the maximum value to you add to the consumer? Let's think of this soap. What's the maximum you will pay and why?
I will pay maximum 50 rupees because other very good quality prop of soaps like Dove and Lux are available at that price.
But wouldn't you be happier as a consumer that it's clinically proven? It's just not a random claim.
It's clinically also that Dove also softer the skin. And,
Okay. Anyone else? What's the maximum you would pay?
It might be equal to the cost which we will incur if we have to get it done at a makeup shop or something.
Exactly. If you have to take a cosmetic treatment from an expensive spa just to get that done. What other considerations? Let's just think of a very popular pricing case. Let's just say we have a bulb which lasts for 100 years. All right. What value will it add to the consumer? The maximum value it will add to the consumer.
All the bulbs or all the lights that
Exactly. That's the technical value. All the bulbs that you have to buy in your lifetime, you would have to pay for them when you replace them. So all of those bulbs combined would be the maximum value.
yeah, we can also add this replacement cost if there is any.
Replacements costs and etc. I'll just come to that.
Yeah.
So for a personal consumption, your strategy should be first of all, as we said earlier, that marketing can enhance the maximum value to the buyer. Just because it's clinically proven and they come out with some other different claims, the value that you get as a buyer is going to enhanced. Is going to get enhanced. And how does it work? So value addition would be in terms of quality of life, right? Let's say your soap is not a competitor, your spa at an expensive place is your indirect competitor, and that's how you will measure how to what value is added. For example, if there is a hair gain oil, and I would not just compare it to the other hair gain oil or pills, I would compare it to a transplant surgery, because you are ready to spend till 2 lakh rupees for a transplant surgery, and that's your maximum value that's added to you, right? The next is lifestyle perception. So this would be technically comparable products but with a better brand or better like aura to it. For example, an iPhone, a good phone comes at rupees 50 60,000. A very good Samsung phone which is like, well equipped, iPhone costs 2x that amount. So probably you can use this somewhere if you have to decide on how much people would be willing to pay just for a brand, or just because it enhances their lifestyle perception. Next would be environment or network effect. So environment or network would mean here, for example, you are trying to buy a house and there are just two sets of buildings. One has a metro near it, one doesn't. Which would be priced higher?
Metro, which has metro near
But
it,
why?
because it has connectivity. And
Yeah, you're getting the this transport cost which are saved, and also convenience, less hassle. And the last would be cost savings. A bulb which lasts for infinity would have lower replacement rate. But there are some things which are missing here. As somebody said, that the cost of like replacing it, the labor and all, would not be is not incorporated here. And I've not done it. I've done it on purpose. I've excluded it on purpose. These are personal consumption products, right? There is something else called commercial usage products. A bulb could be both personal and commercial, but there are some products which are entirely commercial. They will have direct cost savings, lower replacement rate, right? Is exactly the same, but they would have indirect cost savings. They would save on labor. Every time you will have to, let's say government, a municipality would have to change millions of bulbs on the streets, which would take like infinite hours to do, especially in India. If you have a bulb which lasts for an infinity or 100 years, whatever, you would save on those labor. There is something called output value enhancement. Here the quality of the product which a company is making, right, your buyer is making, is enhanced. For example, if I am selling a fertilizer and it leads to better crops, they would get better money. The company, the farmer that I'm selling to, the farmer would be able to extract more money for that crop. So that would be the addition for that farmer. And the last would be a wastage or loss savings. So, for example, I give the example of this suspension. For a transportation company, if it leads to, let's say, 50,000 rupees savings per month, because they have so many trucks, they would be able to pay for that. They would be willing to pay somewhat near to that amount, given that you leave some consumer surplus on the table. These are exactly all the levers that you would use to understand the value you add to the consumer. Beyond this, it's very difficult that you will get a product that for which the price ceiling would be difficult to identify, right? This is like most of the things are covered over here. So let's revisit our framework very quickly, and I will. Yep. Revisit it. First of all, we have to understand what the product we are pricing, what type of innovation it is. Is it radical? Is it modification? Or is it existing to a similar product? Then we understand what is the feasible pricing zone. What are the different pricing strategies we can have, especially for introduction and pay. This is the introduction one. Then we say what pricing methodology would we use. Okay, we use cost based to identify the floor, value based to identify the ceiling, and examples. And then we say for price floor, we'll have to do some maths. This math is required to get the margin, and to be able to understand how much quantity we'll have to sell in how much years. And then we say what is the maximum value. This is all about creativity. There's no maths to it, but you would have to understand there is something called personal consumption and commercial usage. A product can be both for personal and for commercial. And that's it. That's exactly what we wanted to get. You would always give a price range in a case, and probably a ballpark price, that because this is not a very radical innovation. I would say that on this chart, the Santoor soap, I would say this is not a radical innovation. The range is this, all right, but this I would price it at, let's say, plus 20% of the competition, because the product is just plus 20% of the competition. It's not that radical, right? So radical would usually go at price skimming. It could also go to penetration pricing. That's why I have not made a slide on it, but that's a call you will have to take. But you will always give this range, this feasible pricing zone. Any questions till now? Any questions till now? I hope I'm audible. That's all.
Yes, Arjun, you're audible. But
Okay.
I
Any
didn't catch up.
questions? None. Okay. Uh, all right. There are some other things that you have to consider. Uh, there would rarely be any case about bidding or auction, but usually it would be a straightforward pricing problem. Sometimes pricing problems and even M&A are sometimes market sizing. So they would just want you to tell quantity per year. They would want you to tell this. All right. Sometimes you go for innovative schemes, as we discussed that red zone. You would have to understand in the beginning what are the product features to be able to identify if it's 20% better, if it's radical or what. And again, it's very basic, but you should know who the company is selling to. The company is never directly selling to the what do you say, the end consumer. The company sells it to a distribution network. So you'll always have to understand that there would be a margin that the distributor is keeping. Right, the company would never sell to a soap directly to me. All right, so are we ready for our pricing case? And let's not do the maths over here. There's no need to do the maths. As I said in the beginning, the calculations would go complex. uh, let's just apply the framework. Anybody would want to take a shot at this? In fact, let's do it the other way around. I will read out the case and I will take inputs from you all along. So our client is a large pharma company that has found a cure to baldness. It's a pill which will rapidly regrow your hair when to back to when you were a teenager. The pill is to be taken every day to maintain the thickness. Please estimate the price to sell the product at. What's the first thing you will do? What's the first question you will ask?
Type of product.
Exactly. So what type of product it is? Is it like 10-20% better? Is it like just like the competition, or is it a radical innovation?
Radical innovation.
Exactly. So the first set of questions you would ask them, like how much close competitors does it have? Are there any other treatments or pills or which can provide you this qualification? Uh, the qualification being thickness, hair thickness as of a teenager. So is there any other product which can do it? And then that's how you will decide what type of innovation it is. Okay, what's the next set of questions you will ask? We know that it's a radical innovation. What's next?
How many are willing to buy this?
Oh, all right, but that would lead your case to a market estimation one. Let's just keep it to a pricing case. That's also one of the approaches that you can take, but then it would be a market estimation case. Yogesh covered market estimation yesterday. I'm not going into that. Let's keep it into a pricing front. What's the next question you will ask?
Price floor.
Okay, so before we come to that price floor, the question is what the company wants to do with it.
The strategy.
Yeah, how does the product fit in the company strategy, right? So okay, so next we would want to ask what the company wants to do with it. Does it want to go mass market, give it to everybody, price penetration, or does it want to skim? Now, what's the next step now?
What are the costs incurred?
Exactly. You would say that I will identify the price floor for this, which is the minimum price I would be willing to sell it, and I would identify all the costs associated with it, and then understand what is the minimum I would be willing to sell. What's the next thing?
What's the maximum limit that is based on the transplantation thing? How much that will that cost, and so that we can get a cap on it.
Exactly. And I think we have already discussed this, that it would be the maximum value that somebody is going to extract, the consumer would be close to, let's say, 2000, 2 lakh rupees. What do you say? Hair transplant surgery, right? While other oils and other pills are available at 1000, 1500 rupees. But that's not the maximum value. There's one more way of looking at it.
We can also use this thing because hair transplant surgery is the surgery part. So because it is not having a surgery kind of a thing, it could be cost. We can price it higher than that.
Exactly. There's a premium to it because there is no surgery. But let's just say the case interview says, they won't say, because the higher value is usually creative. Let's just say the case interviewer says that no, that's a surgery, that's more of a permanent treatment. Let's not take it. Now what would you do?
Arjun,
Interviewer ने मना कर दिया.
can we take it as like quality improvement, like quality of life?
Yes, quality of life improvement, of course, yes. लेकिन I said one thing यहाँ पे. You would have to identify the product features. And if you get a stubborn interviewer like me, and those of you who did 180 DC cases PG21 this year would know that I sometimes tend to get stubborn. If you would have to ask product features यहाँ पे.
So, one thing here, so we can also check for product features like in terms of what are the side effects for this product.
Exactly. One more detail is given to you in the case. It says within 3 months. What is the competition like? How much time do they take? They are to be taken, let's say, for 1 year, right, to be able to have any sizable impact. You are able to do it in 3 months. That's one fourth of the total pills to be taken, or oil to be applied, whatever. So the first logic would be that you will price it at least 4x higher. Even for identifying the maximum value, you can do some rough calculations. For a pill or oil would be how many times you have to apply it a day. And especially for hair loss, it would be something like, for how much years do you have to keep it applying for. Is it lifetime? Is this a product for lifetime? Are the other products for lifetime? Because it's a medicine, right? जिंदगी भर लेना पड़ता है कभी कभारी. So what is the time duration? So even for identifying the maximum value, if your case interviewer doesn't want you to be all creative, you should have a mathematical approach ready. How will that come? From understanding the product features. All right. Do you want to take a break, or do you want to move? Okay, these are some of the resources. So as I said, it's a very, very neglected part. You won't find a lot of great cases on this pricing. These are the 4 materials where I got pricing cases. In fact, in Is the Case, there was no case for pricing, and just look at it. It's very handful of cases. The MDI casebook is really good for M&A and pricing, so refer to that. All right. So do you guys want to take a break, or do you want me to continue with M&A?
You can continue, I think.
Okay. This is a very, very straightforward and short framework. All right. Just like pricing, this is also neglected. This Victor Cheng does cover it, but it's not in great detail as is profitability and other frameworks. All right. So the first question to ask for an M&A, let's say, okay, I'll be very careful with the examples over here. Let's say Walmart tries to acquire Flipkart. What is the business case? Why do they want to do it? Any thoughts on that?
To have a greater influence in India.
Geographic. Else,
Geography.
okay. What next?
Online presence.
Online presence. Okay. So a channel and geography. You were saying. What else?
To curtail the growing competition.
To curtail the growing competition. Exactly. That's a very important part. What else?
Is it also that when they make expenses, it reduces the cash they have, and when they make an investment, it reduces the cash, so it reduces taxes?
Tax savings, exactly. That could be a financial reason. So these are the different type of benefits that Walmart is going to get. But the problem is, how do you fit this information in a case? All the frameworks that are there are not doing a great job of doing of of incorporating all of this information, right? It's very difficult to understand if there is a business case. I don't want you to go out there and interview and faff कि नहीं उसको क्या बोलते हैं, इंडिया आना था तो उसने वॉलमार्ट फ्लिपकार्ट एक्वायर कर लिया एंड नाउ इट्स कमिंग टू इंडिया. It is true, or maybe it is the actual reason, but there has to be some structure to it. Let's try to get that structure. So you would have an acquiring company and they would state an objective for M&A. For acquiring Flipkart, they would say this is the reason X we are doing it. Right? We all have covered it. The next step is we have to understand, is that stated objective the actual problem the company is facing? And it is going to branch out. It will branch out given that your interviewer agrees that you want to branch out. Right? Your first branch is this simple branch. This is the next branch. Does your interview want you to take this direction? He may or may not want to, but you would have to understand. And this is the approach that Victor Cheng takes, by the way. Is that the problem that the company is facing? For example, we said there are operational or financial problems the company can have. Its revenue is not growing, its cost, it has cost problems, or it could have working capital requirements. The other company is a part of the value chain, its working capital would improve, that company comes in, or tax savings, as somebody was saying. So we would add, and this is something that Rajat would cover tomorrow, so I'm not going into it. This is not my area of focus today, because Rajat will be doing it tomorrow. So based on this side analysis, you would understand what is the source of the problem the company has. Let's say Walmart says it wants to expand its revenue, right? Now its revenue must be stagnated, that's why it wants to increase it, which means it's an operational problem under revenue. अब रेवेन्यू क्यों प्रॉब्लम है, क्यों प्रॉब्लमैटिक है? मे बी लोग ऑनलाइन चैनल पे जा रहे हैं, ठीक है, मे बी लोग अब क्या बोलते हैं, यूएस में उतना स्कोप बचा नहीं है, मे बी द स्कोप हैज शिफ्टेड नाउ टू इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमीज लाइक इंडिया. So if those are the problems, if you are able to pinpoint, yes, those are the problems, you understand that source of problem, then you would say yes, it's a there is synergy, and then you would match it to the target company's abilities. Right? What are the ability of Flipkart? We have all said it. It's online, it's in India, it has the ability to stop Amazon, right? Before going into all that faff that it will stop Amazon, this is a price war, this is a war coming, let's just understand, does even Walmart want to stop Amazon? Right? In what all geographies? Can it even stop it? Sometimes the question is that. So you'd have to understand the source of the problem, map it back to the target company's abilities. How would you do it? This is a ready framework. There's a ready framework to identify the synergies, you would say, and this is, I've taken a slight deviation from Victor Cheng. So it says that you have customers, you have products, you have the company details, and you have cost for both these companies, and this would directly lead to a margin. Wherever there is cost, it would lead to margin, cost and margin. Firm A, firm B, इनके जितने भी details है, just write it down. And then imagine in a world where these are combined entities, what would happen? Is this framework clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Does it make sense? I know the last one was really like not a lot of numbers heavy, and what do you say, a lot of imaginations you have to go into, but is this very clear? Yeah.
One question.
So
So what do
yeah,
we fill into the synergies box exactly?
I'm just coming to the next slide for that. That's exactly the next logical question. Is it who's it talking, by the way?
It's Rohit.
Okay, right. So that's the exactly next question. So what are the different kind of synergies? So synergies would be, let's say you have listed the details of firm A and firm B about the customers. Let's say you get access to a new market, right? For example, India, new geographies. Or let's say you are a bank who is looking to acquire an insurance company, that's a very very far-fetched example, but you get the ability to cross sell, right? Or if you're a life insurance company, you acquire a what do you say, a life insurance company acquires a, car insurance company or whatever non-life insurance company, you get the ability to cross sell. You already have the customers in place, you can cross sell. So that would lead to a synergy. It could be market access, cross selling, or new geographies. Next is product synergy, right? So market standard good and a radical new technology. For example, a market standard good today is a petrol car, okay, ICE, internal combustion engine. Would such a firm be willing to acquire a very very small EV startup? Yes, they have standard good and they have radical new technology. It could be a luxury product. For example, a Volkswagen has BMW. They have a mass market product, which is Volkswagen, and they have these. Sorry, Audi. I'm confusing. It's Audi, right? So whatever. They have a luxury product in luxury car segment also. So that's a what do you say? That's a synergy. Then you have on the company level. So a company could have a huge sales force. For example, a pharma product, you need huge sales force to be able to do a good marketing initiative. And for example, another product, a smaller one, has access to some patents, or it has got a good R&D team. So that would be a good acquisition. And the last would be cost. So for example, if you have a product which requires a very very limited raw material, for example lithium ion or rare earth metals, and there are startups in China who are extracting it from the ground or recycling it, and there is a battery manufacturer here in India, it would make a lot of sense to partner with them. A lot of API manufacturers in India, Granules, Divis, have the backward integration in China. Why? Ye pharma APIs, right? If you all understand, pharma APIs come from the ground somewhere, and those are manufactured there in China. So you would be very willing to acquire such companies. These are basically revenue synergies to get more customers, to have a bit product mix, to be able and partner it with company. So these two plus company, these lead to revenue synergies, and cost or margin related things plus your company attributes lead to cost synergies. Such cases would involve a great understanding of the business realities for the two companies, their attributes, and what could happen when we combine them. A little bit of imagination there. Any questions so far on this?
No,
So,
Ajay.
I have a question. Usually, when we merge two companies, A and B, there would be more than A plus B.
Yep.
So, how do we tell, like, how do we measure that, or how can we find that out?
See, this it's not very easy to tell that in a numerical manner, right? But then you would have to use that sense of imagination that if let's take this example, right? If this small company continues to hold its patent for the next 5 years, what value would it add? Somewhat, maybe क्या बोलते हैं कुछ हॉस्पिटल्स तक रीच होगी, वहां जाके बेच देगी. So let's say it is able to sell 5 million worth of drugs. There is another firm which has got a huge sales force but no innovative product. What will happen? Sales force को निकालना पड़ेगा, right? The what value will it add? Let's say 5 billion company है, 5 billion की company है, 5 billion revenue generate करती रहेगी. It's a stagnant firm. Sales would reduce over time. So what's the total value? 5 billion for the large company which has got good sales force, 5 million for the small company which has got an R&D product but limited reach, right? That's A plus B. But when you combine them, what's going to happen? You say that 5 million is going to jump to, let's say, a billion. From 5.05 billion, you are jumping to 6 billion. And that's the synergy of 0.95 billion. That's the synergy. Because just because you merge these two, you have created that extra value. So that's how you get the A plus B is greater than A and B together. Individually, sorry. You would have to take this sort of an approach. What else? Any questions or clarifications? Or I will move to the next one. All right. Okay. So the last question that I will have to ask, and like the first we asked was the business case, and then we are saying if there's a business case, what are the exact synergies? What are the exact synergies? And the next is what's the value of A plus B combined? And the next you are asking is what else do we have to check for? This gets very tricky until and unless you are doing it for financial consulting. I'm not sure how many will ask what's deal financing and what's the deal structure. Deal rational we have done right, है ना, जो हमने पहले किया, that's all deal rational. Financing and deal structure delves into a lot of finance. Would you take the EBITDA multiples? And there's a whole course dedicated to it in second year. All right. Probably you should ask questions around it, but I'm not very sure if the interview would like to go deep into it. The targets, what's its financial position, the growth, that's very important. For any case, you would have to understand to be able to get to this A plus B, you would have to understand कि उसका growth वो projections क्या है, capabilities कितनी है, हमारी capability कितनी है, management ने past में कैसा perform किया है. Probably your interviewer would guide you to a specific feature of the target, right? And the next is regulatory environment. This is one of the sanity checks that you should ask. Is there any law, regulation, or anti profiteering or some other anti monopoly law which is limiting this? The last is external market and environment. So that's exactly A plus B. What's the overlap in the market, the market size, uh, again the combined growth of the entities. What would be the combined profitability? Because sometimes, especially when there is a cost synergy, the profitability is going to jump. All right. An interesting point is when the acquisition is being done by a PE, right? When the PE is doing an M&A, they would have a portfolio of companies, and the synergies could be with the multiple of them. For a PE, a private equity firm, when it's acquiring, you wouldn't just say कि business logic क्या है. You have to ask if it's trying to pair it up with some other portfolio company. And the last, of course, is exit options. Again, this would delve into finance. I'm not really sure if you should take this approach. All right, we'll do a very small M&A case. Again, I will follow the technique. I won't go deep into the solving part. So I'll read out the case and I will ask you what to take. What is a radical logical approach? Your client is a major airline operator and has been doing well financially in the recent past. Right? The management is looking for a potential M&A target to grow the company. Again, revenue expansion is the stated goal. You have been onboarded as a consultant and they want you to advise them on the M&A plans. What would you do? And this is straight out of the MDI case book. How would you start? Any approaches? What's the first question you will ask?
What's the objective?
Exactly. So the stated objective is that they want to grow the revenue, right? In our framework, we have reached here. Now what next?
Problem.
Exactly. So you would ask the interviewer for the details about the for the acquiring company, like what has been the revenue growth in the past, what has been the revenue growth for the industry. If the revenue, if the industry growing at 10% and you are growing at 2%, there is a problem revenue definitely. But what is the source of that problem? Like it could be either geography, it could be either that you are a luxury player but the market is growing in the mass market. So you have to identify the source of the problem. What next?
Potential targets.
Yeah, potential targets. But what about the potential targets? What
Okay,
would you
but
want to know about them? Let's say we have 5 targets. What would you want to know about them?
Their abilities.
Their abilities, right? So, what questions? What around abilities? What are the
Customer.
different abilities that you would look for in an aviation firm or an airline company, rather?
What's the fleet
Financial.
size, revenue growth, and
The
the
number of outposts,
sales force
areas.
and all employees.
Who are their customers?
All right,
The management,
all right,
culture, and management.
exactly. So, culture and all. What happens is I don't personally go very deep into culture. The reason being that after 2 or 3 lines, it becomes a lot of faff, right? It becomes a lot of faff, and until unless you are specializing in HR, they would have a very intricate understanding of how to identify culture. We in PGPM, I think we are not well equipped to do it, right? Or if somebody has some great experience about it, please let me know, because when I start doing culture, after just the second third line, it becomes a lot of faff. So
Basically, culture aspect comes after when the integration is going on, right?
exactly. So that's also something after the fact. You'd usually not stop a M&A because the culture doesn't match. You would make approaches to fit in, to fit it, right? So what all has been said is awesome. Just that when we are trying to understand the target abilities companies and our abilities, just do it on these 4 parameters, right? For example, somebody said, what is the customer base? Is it a luxury or is it mass market? What is the capability of the companies, fleet size and all? At what cost have they leased the planes, which would give you the cost? And we know the how to go about combining these entities, right? So anything else that would be required in this case? I think that would lead to a logical sound solution. If you're able to do this, and then to be able to identify which synergy is a great one, and let's say you have 5 targets, you do that for all the 5 companies, and let's see where the maximum value is being created. सबसे ज्यादा A plus B का sum कहाँ पे आ रहा है, right? And then you would say, अच्छा, if all of them are priced equally, right? If a company is really good, but it's priced, let's say 3x the other target options, you would again have to stop. You would have to funnel down. So that's where all this information comes in. But you would have to start on the business logic, on the deal rationale. Finance कितने में हो रहा है, EV EBITDA कितना दे रहे हैं, that should come after that deal rationale, or to be able to choose from the multiple options that we have, right? uh any questions around this, or anything that we have done? Yep. Any questions or additions, or you would want to modify anything, or feedback rather? I'd be happy to take a feedback in this hall itself, in this meet itself rather. All right, I think there is nothing. Thank you, Purva. Like, I'm not sure if अगर तू दोस्त नहीं होता तो क्या लिखता, but चलो ठीक है, at least video on कर
I
ले.
think it was helpful. I do believe it was helpful, this session.
Okay, the whole aim was to provide you with a synthesized knowledge from different assets, and to provide you with a framework which would work in almost all cases, right? So thank you so much for being here. It's really appreciated. uh, Thank you guys.
I have one question, Arjun, though. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah, sure.
related. So I couldn't attend the session yesterday. Is there a recording of that?
So Yogesh will have it. We are recording all sessions so that others
Mhm.
can benefit from it. So yes, I'll talk to Yogesh and Rohit Hari, right? In fact,
Yeah.
you directly talk to Yogesh. He'll provide you with a
Mhm.
link.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Any other question around anything? Nope. So I'll close this meeting. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Arjun.
Thank
Thank you
Thanks,
you.
so
bye.
Great
much.
session, man.
Thanks, bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Arjun.
Sure, Namrata. Thanks.